All right. Thank you so much for joining me today, Chaplain Pugsley. It's a joy. I've met you through Civil Air Patrol, and it's been wonderful learning from you and hearing your stories from the military. We're looking ahead to Veterans Day that is coming up here next week. And this is just an opportunity to speak with you and perhaps give civilians, family members, even clergy a bit more insight into who the veteran is and maybe how they can better support our veterans. So thank you very much and welcome. I'm just going to ask you to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay, well, I'm Linda Pugsley. I currently am a chaplain with the Air Force Auxiliary, which is also known as Civil Air Patrol. I spent 11 years in the Air Force as a flight nurse, and I had 2 tours as a nurse in Vietnam. And but I got out of the Air Force. You see, can I tell a little story here during my introduction?
By all means.
It has to do with you know, there's an old saying that says, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Well, I had planned to retire from the military. I also, when I came back from Vietnam, was in the reserves. So I remained as what they call an Air Reserve Technician, which is a civil service job that coordinates all of the missions for the Air Force Reserve. So I was working full time as a civil servant and as a reservist 1 weekend a month and then 2 weeks during the year. So I was going to have a retirement from reserves and from civil service. So I had my life all planned. But after 11 years, the Lord just called my heart, and I just had such a heart for ministry, and my family and friends thought I was crazy. And but I resigned. I didn't get to retire. I put 11 years in, but I resigned from the Air Force as a major. And here I am today, pastor and a chaplain. And anyone that knew me back before my Lord days wouldn't have believed that I've been a chaplain. But God, like I said, God has a great sense of humor, and he looks down and he goes, yeah, watch what I can do with this one. So that's me, and that's where we are. And here I am today.
Oh, wonderful. And so you currently, though, you say you're in Civil Air Patrol, and that's primarily what you're doing at this time, and also pastoring.
Yes, I'm the associate pastor at a little church, Great Hope Christian Fellowship in Tampa, Florida. And I'm really blessed because we have a very small ministry, but it's a large external ministry to veterans and to, I speak in the high schools. And so there's a lot of things that are going on in our community outside of our church. But my church considers my work with Civil Air Patrol as part of our external ministry. So they greatly support me with the time needed and the opportunities to go where I'm needed. So I'm just really grateful for that. The missions of the Lord take a lot of different ways. I mean, it's not just standing in a pulpit in a church. And it's just a lot of different ways that God has us minister, and that just seems to be the way that he called me. But my love for the military, God sees that in my heart. It was very difficult for me to leave the military. I absolutely loved it. It was very difficult work. It's different than any civilian nursing job I ever had because it's connected with a team that's very unique. And there's a bond that's in that I found different in civilian work. And you have friends in civilian work, etc. But the mission in the military. Oh, where'd we go here?
Maybe you.
Oh, there I am. Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
The mission in the military, because it often involves wartime training or actual wartime and combat work, it's so different. The closest thing civilian-wise, I think, is law enforcement work and our firefighters. There's that different kind of like life on the line. You don't know if you're going to come home alive. Most librarians don't think about, whether they're going to come home alive, or someone that works in Walmart, or, a nurse in a civilian hospital. But those that have a, more intense mission sometimes have a really tight bond. But anyways, I love the military and everything it stands for, and all the people that were in it. And it was very difficult for me to say goodbye to it. But I felt my commander was the Lord, so he kind of pulled rank on everything, and but it wasn't easy. But I did, and I'm ever grateful. God has really blessed me in that. So bless the Lord.
Yeah. So that's a very interesting point that you make because I served 27 years in the military, in the Air Force as a flight nurse. So we have that in common. And I agree with you. I just interviewed someone who was he was in the Marines. He's a veteran. He was in the Marines. He was a dog handler, had
Mm,
several tours over in Afghanistan. He talked about the small unit that
yeah,
they had, and because of the bond
yeah,
that they developed, he talked
mm,
about that each person finds that it's their responsibility for the
yeah,
next person and to make sure that the mission is successful. And he talked about the contrast between being in the military and trying to find that same kind of genuine
yeah.
um, bond in the civilian sector. And I'm not sure. I know it's two different things, but when you're in the military and you get used to that, you still try to find it out there in the civilian world.
Yeah, I think that most of us are still on that journey.
Hmm.
Those of us that have had the, opportunity to serve in a combat zone, um, have some unique bonds, have some unique experiences. Life and death experiences are always traumatic. They
Yeah.
you carry them with you forever, and you either able to put them in your heart in a very special place and be able to go on living with those wounds, or they end up bleeding for all of your life and you become
Right.
non-functional. And
Right.
that's where prayer cover truly comes in. We
Hmm.
can help. I have a master's degree in counseling, so there's a lot of techniques and all this kind of stuff, but those really only end up uh, modifying a behavior. They don't get
Right.
into the heart and soul, and that's where
Right.
I just really am blessed in terms of being a chaplain. And I
Hmm.
always say that because I'm still dealing with many of the veterans from Vietnam who just haven't been able to come home yet. I know I had my struggles. I never cried for 15 years, and I think it really affected me with, some of the impatience and the angers and all those things that you can't even put your finger on. Still to
Hmm.
this day, I have to sit in a restaurant where I can see the entrance. Don't even
Right.
ask me why. It's just like crazy. If I see a can on the
Uh-huh.
road, it's like I have a tightening in the pit of my stomach, like, don't kick it, it might blow up. And I'm going, hello, we're home. So I mean, some of these things are kind of
Wow.
unique, and how you deal with them, it really has to be unique. But the presence of God in my life has made all of the difference. Those things are still there, but how I
Hmm.
handle them has become a manageable situation. But that
Right.
thing about the camaraderie, I think we search for a long time, and some don't ever find that.
Right.
Um, and I think that's where they end up a little bit more lost. And when you don't feel good about yourself, sometimes the three feel goods will come along: the sex, alcohol, and drugs. And
Hmm.
that's where we have to deal with some of those additional things and the traumas in
Right.
life. But I call it the circle of life for me, because I
Hmm.
was dealing with the physical wounds of the young men in Vietnam all that many years ago. And now I'm still dealing with them, but with their emotional wounds. So as
Right.
a chaplain, I can help them with their emotional and their spiritual wounds. So for me, it's a total circle of life. It's exactly the same thing. I'm just not physically dressing their wounds. That was
Hmm.
almost easy, and compared to the depth of the emotional and
Exactly.
spiritual wounds.
Right.
To wipe off a wound, to stop a bleeding amputated limb. I mean, all of those things.
Right.
Massive head injuries and abdominal injuries and triple amputees and all this kind of stuff. Those things are almost handleable. The horror is there. That gets deeply into your soul, but that's something you can see. The end result of what you did, you can see. But so many of these wounds are hidden in our veterans, and
Mm-hmm.
it's unique. And I don't want that to go to the side. I love it that the VA is extremely involved in the suicide intervention and prevention.
Yes.
Many of our churches have become awake to that. Um,
Yes.
there's a group called the Veteran Friendly Military Congregations, and it's any church can join. Military Chaplains Association, the MCA, MCA.org has all sorts of information, and it's an organization that it sends information to churches. They
Mm-hmm.
cater to veterans. I mean, just It's really good. Now, this is funny. If I could continue just sharing a little bit.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
I went to a very, very dear friend passed away. He was a Vietnam vet friend, and he had cancer of the pancreas. He had about a 3 or almost a 4-year fight, but God blessed him, gave him some remission in between chemo. He and his wife got to travel and do some of the things they wanted to. But anyways, he passed away just recently. I did his funeral yesterday up at Bushnell National Cemetery here in Florida. And I met with his wife a few days ago at Mission Barbecue. Now, I'd never been there. A lot of veterans speak very highly of the place. And when I was there at noon, and we happened to be there about 12:15 for lunch, I met her there to get some information, more information on her husband, etc. And while we were there at noon, they stop everything. They play the national anthem. Can you believe this? Wow. All of the staff stops. Every customer in there gets up from their place, stands at attention, puts their hand over their heart. And I was crying. That touched my heart so deeply.
Yes.
Well, I went and sat down, and a young girl came over, and she gave me, she noticed I have a little keychain that has a Vietnam vet note thing on it. So she happened to notice that. She came over and gave me a little Vietnam veteran pin. Oh. And then the manager came over a little while later and gave me a little free dessert. And he said, "Thank you for your service." I wept. From Vietnam, we got no recognition. And were laughed at and slapped at and called all sorts of bad things. I today, 50-something years later, am still crying at someone that recognizes what I did. I don't think people understand the sacrifices that veterans make. In the military, you often have to travel away from your family for extended periods of time. Yes. Your family often has to move. Now, lately they haven't been moving as much. And things have changed. We can do more with a little smaller force because of the dynamics of the communication and all of the internet and all of the massive things that they have now as tools and weapons and things like that. So, but in the military, you have to often travel a lot. Your family makes huge sacrifices. If the mom is in the military, then the spouse has to make that. Whoever is in the military, some have both the mom and the dad in the military. Mm-hmm. It's absolutely amazing what you have to do. But I think it's the servant hearts that tend to go into the military. The servant hearts tend to go into teaching and nursing and the medical field, that kind of thing. So the servant heart is absolutely predominant in the military. And I think with that servant heart, you are willing to make those extreme sacrifices. Mm-hmm. And you don't get a whole lot of money for it either. I mean, what are we doing? What am I thinking about? Oh my gosh. I mean, I think, well, that was a long time ago. I think I made like, I don't know, it was maybe a couple of $100 a week as a nurse in a combat zone. And another $100 a month because I was in a combat zone, and another $100 a month because I was on flight status. I mean, it was like a pittance, and yet we did it out of love of our fellow countrymen and love of our country. Mm-hmm. And I don't want anyone to lose that. And some people, I call it a part of the blessings that we have on our country are so great that so many are so spoiled. They don't realize the cost that some of us have paid for them to have their spoiled stuff, and so the military does have a unique place in our country. It's not all aggression, which some people don't understand. There's a tremendous amount of protection. I mean, often you have to have aggression. If someone's going to bomb your house, you kind of want to make sure they don't, that kind of thing. So you can't, I'll tell you this, you cannot diplomatically talk away a bomb coming at you. So the whole idea is prevention, and I think that the military is really working hard on that. But anyways, I kind of have probably answered a couple of questions in those.
Oh, yes, you did. Yeah. It's amazing. Somebody might think, okay, you're a nurse, you're a chaplain, and then you make the statement about not being able to talk away a bomb that is coming at you. So even in those professions, you have to have the right perspective,
You do.
You
You
might
do.
want
I
to,
think
can you
I
come?
think it's what the Lord has shared with us to have mercy and to have kindness, but to have strength. God never said to lay down, let the lions eat you. He talks about wisdom. We're seeing a waning wave of wisdom.
Yes,
But in the
yes,
Lord, even if I don't have enough wisdom, I can count on God to give it to me as I need it.
yes.
Now, I did not have that perspective when I was originally in the military. I was just a young girl from Boston. I didn't know anything about anything, and you learn a lot. There's a lot of very, very good people in the military, and there's a few jerks, but that's in everything,
And yeah.
and but for the most part, and the friends you make in the military, it's amazing. You're still in contact with them today,
Yes.
and it's just absolutely amazing, as you well know. So
Yes. I've already interviewed a few of them, and it was just amazing to reconnect
yeah, yeah.
with them. So, what kept you while you were in the military? What was that thing that gave you that perseverance to continue to strive and move forward?
For me personally, I think it was such a love of this country, even though some might have a little bit of misinformation on who we are in our history. I come from a long family line here. My family on both sides can be traced back to the end of the 1600s, and all of my family have participated in fighting the wars against this country. And so I think we have a history of that in my family. My grandfather was in World War I. My dad was a Marine in World War II, and he was wounded at Guadalcanal, and that's how I met my mom. They shipped him back home. She was a pharmacist mate in the Navy, and that's how they met, and that's how our family began. And then my brother and I were both in Vietnam at the same time, and three of my nephews were Marines in Fallujah back in 2005 when it was very, very difficult time over there. So we have a long history of that. And I think the thing that kept me going was someone has to step up to the plate. If
Yeah.
everyone just sits back and says, well, I don't want to touch a gun and I don't want to fight. Now, I understand that, and that's okay. That can be your choice. But if the majority does that, who will protect us? So I think that was just kind of deeply woven into my DNA. And also my family, we have a lot of law enforcement officers in my family. My grandfather, 7 uncles, my dad, 2 brothers, and 2 nephews at this point. So I think that sense of not only nurturing, but protection. I think there's a little something that's in there. More
Right.
protection than aggression, but sometimes you have to use a little force in order to protect. But I think it's just that sense of protection that's there, and that kind of kept me going.
I remember,
And nursing, I love nursing. I mean, I was
yeah.
really good at what I did, and I love doing it. So I think that combination for me was a really good combination.
And it is that same servant's heart that will make it be okay for us to go through those survival training and weapons
Right,
training and to
right.
to stand at your tent when you're deployed if you're
Yep,
the one that have the watch because you have to protect your patients and yourself.
that's right.
Um,
That's right.
so I didn't see it as, oh, I'm a nurse and I shouldn't. Um,
Right, right. You do whatever you have to protect your patients.
right.
And I think that we all did that, even to our own peril, but you weren't thinking of your own peril. You really weren't. I mean, just it was the patients can't get up out of their bed because their legs are gone, and they need, so you do whatever you can to protect them. I used to have dreams of walking backwards up the ramp on the 141 after the patients were loaded with an M16 shooting back the enemy so we could get loaded up and leave. Just like it just gets into you, that
But
sense of protection.
you're right. You're right because I remember that part of our training, the front end crew pilot, co-pilot, and engineers and all that. They're doing their training up
Yep,
front. We're doing our training in the back. And I
yep,
remember it involved, touch and goes. You're
yep.
taking off
Oh,
that
yeah,
flight line with your tail
yeah,
open,
yeah.
and
In the vomit
because
comment. We saw the vomit comment.
you just ratchet down your patient on the
Yep,
floor of the plane and you're going, you know, and that's you protecting your patients while the pilots are trying to get you out of there, you know.
It is.
I tell you.
It's an amazing circumstance that most people won't understand. And I would hope that people even listening in could understand the heartfelt love that so much of our military has for each other and for this country, and a desire to do whatever it takes, even to dying. I mean, I can remember being on the bases over there. I was mostly at Da Nang in Vietnam, but we'd sometimes get to Cam Ranh Bay and to Tan Son Nhut, and the base would be bombed. I mean, you know, you don't even know if you're going to live. I mean, but you have to keep working. I remember just hour after hour, machine gun fire, and it wasn't practice range, machine gun fire. You know, is it getting closer? What's going on here? You know, is the base going to get overrun? You don't even know, but you can't stop. You have to keep working. You can't let that get in the way. And I think it just takes you have to be trained, like you know, well know. You have to train to be overtrained. And I think that the military spends a lot of time training for what? So that you don't have to think about what the next step is. You automatically respond because you've trained to do that. And that way your life it can be saved and those around you, you know, so. It's really important, but there's a lot that people give up. I can remember being in Vietnam, and I didn't even know it until I got to, we took a trip, we took some patients. I happened to get on the Hawaii run, which was nice. You know, you took them out of Vietnam, went to Japan, you go to Hawaii, you know, so, and I made a call home and I found out that one of my grandmothers had died. And this was a grandmother that was dear, dear, dear to me. She lived with our family half of the year, because the winters were too harsh in upstate New York. So she used to live with us during the winter. And one of my aunts had died, and I never found out until, I mean, these are sacrifices you make. I not only missed everything, the funeral, everything. I didn't even know she had passed away until I made a call home. And then, I mean, I was hurt and I was bereft with grief. But you know something, I was with my flight crew because I only had time to make a quick phone call because we in between get flight. And I was surrounded with love. They just came around me and just gave me the support I needed at a very difficult time. But most people, when someone in your family dies, you get a phone call and then you go to tend to them and be tended to. And here I was isolated away from everything. And a week later found out it's all done. I couldn't even get there in time. It was already finished. She was already buried. So that's part of some of the tremendous sacrifices that are made by those in the military that in regular civilian life, you usually don't have to make those kinds of sacrifices.
And those sacrifices, those experiences, they're so deep. They're so, you know, they're so vast and all consuming at times. And then you live like that very fast and then you're home.
Yeah.
Yes,
I think that was a tremendous part of our experience. I still am looking for that level of intensity, and I've never found it. I came back, and so I went to work at night in the intensive care unit. And I go, yeah, this is, and like, you know, by 2:00 in the morning, I had 8 patients, and on the aircraft you had 40 liters and 40 ambulatory, you know, and I'm going like 2:00. I go, okay, could like some emergency happen here or something? You know, like everything was taken care of. They were settled, they were stable, they were whatever, you know. Yeah. And it's like, oh my God. And yet I came back and you couldn't start an IV. You had to call the doctor for everything. As a flight nurse, there were no doctors around. You were it. You could get on the headset and call for some emergency you couldn't handle. But it's like I came back to like, okay, so I can't do anything. Okay, I'll just call the doctor for everything. Okay. I should have probably gone back to the ER, but I thought the intensive care unit would be more intensive. But I've never found anything so intense. I think that's why I think that's why I've been bungee jumping. I've been whitewater rafting. I'm trying to find that intensity again. You know?
You're out way out there on the edge of
I'm on the Appalachian Trail. I'm going to do the Ocean to Lake Trail in January at 64 miles. Oh, it is.
That is so true, you know, because I shared that you just said we didn't have doctors, we had protocols. And I remember we were 6 litters high, and the patient on the very top litter was seizing. So I had to climb up there.
Yep. Oh yeah.
So I got somebody on the side.
Well, the aircraft is flying. Remember, one hand for you, one for the patient. Yeah, I know.
And it was, and then you have those sad moments where, patient X dies and you're in international waters. And so he's not, you can't pronounce.
Right. You can't,
you can't sit down.
The cover over where they were on the litters. And, and that's something else too, that I think that was part of my pain. In Vietnam, we would be flying them out of Vietnam from Da Nang back to Clark Air Base in the Philippines, or from Da Nang into to Japan at Yokota Air Base. Because back in those days, what we did was just the most immediate: stop the bleeding, sew a few things up, clean them up, get the IVs going, keep the airways open, striker frames, spike a cast, all this stuff, and just get them back to the major surgeries and things back at the other bases. Well, they've changed that now, because in the FOBs, the forward operating bases, they have all of the specialists there. So you get all your original stuff. You get all sorts of reconstructions and things, and the internal fixations and all the stuff that you need, instead of that little 72-hour window that we had them and then we sent them out and all this kind of stuff. So there were a lot that we sent off, because we had to do our ground duties in Vietnam. So we had to be there to prepare them and go and take care of them while they're on the ground. And when we sent them off, we didn't know what happened to them. I think that was a burden.
That was hard.
Are you going to make it? Because as a nurse, it's like, are you going to make it? Well, you don't leave them. You're there all the time, all the different shifts. You see their progress and what's going on. But some of them, they were so close. Are they going to make it or didn't they?
Yeah.
You don't know. So either you're flying in the air and you're dropping them off at a base for care, or you're on the ground and you're preparing them and putting them in the aircraft, and then they still go. And I think that's why now, as a current, I do a lot of speaking engagements for the military and for the veteran groups. And I love to speak to the Purple Heart groups, because I get to see them. And those that were in Vietnam, we cry and hug. I said, you made it. Sometimes the same dates we were there, they were on the flights. They could have been the ones I took care of. Of course, nobody looks like they did back then, so I couldn't have recognized anybody if I wanted to, But I think that not knowing how they did, if they got to live, got married, had kids, because they were so young. They were about 18, 19 years old. I was 22, not much younger, but I was like an old lady compared to them. They were so young and so innocent and so sweet. They were not baby killers and drugger. They were not. A few at the end were, and that was their mess. But these guys were very, very brave. And see, we don't cause the problems, which people don't understand in the military. We go as ordered to help solve them. And a lot of our young people don't realize communism was spreading across the whole world back then. And Russia was totally communist. China was communist. It was a little different, but so many countries had been invaded without their permission. Yugoslavia and Poland and Estonia and Latvia. It was going right across all of Europe. And then North Korea, and then they invaded the South, but then we drew a line. We didn't get rid of the North, we drew a line, and then in Vietnam, they invaded again. So it was a fight in our hearts against communism, which is totally against a free market system. So we weren't there for nefarious reasons, but to stop the spread of something that we didn't deem appropriate for for our system. If somebody chooses that, that's their business, but not for our system. So we went with the right ideas, but politically, you look back historically, all the rest is gyration, but we weren't involved in the politics. We were involved in, there's a small country that was being invaded by force, and we happened to have the capacity to help. We started out just trying to help them. Okay, let's build up your military and you fight your own war. But you get over there and find out that the government was full of graft, and corruption, they didn't have any equipment. So what are we going to do? Leave all the people? And then we did. I think that's part of the sore part of Vietnam veterans. We were there and saw what could have been done to save them. And we didn't. We just got tired of fighting because people at home got tired of it. And we had the wrong information about us and what the war was doing. And I think that's part of of our pain that we have. And that happens in the military because you're not involved in the politics, you're just involved in what you're told to do. So I think we saw the Vietnamese people were a lovely people. They were a family-oriented agrarian society, mostly agrarian. They weren't highly industrialized like our country. And our soldiers really, they many times loved the people. But then the suspicions and the bombings, and you didn't know if the person standing beside you was going to blow themselves up. I remember one time they sent a little kid. They had pulled the pin on a grenade and gave it to the kid and told him to walk across the street and hand it to the soldier, and blow the soldier and the Jeep up, and it's just like unbelievable. So I mean, some of these things happen, and we were there. And then when we left, we felt really bad because about 3 million Vietnamese and Cambodians and Laotians were just killed. And I'm going, why did all of our guys have to die and get severely wounded if we were just going to leave? So you see, in the military, sometimes it's more than just, well, I fixed the airplane and I went home, or I swept the flight line and I went home. These other things are connected in the work that we do, and you get involved and you say, gee, that's a wonderful people that was kind of left to their own after we just left. So, and then so military people can have some very strong opinions about whether you should go to war or not, And so as you talk to your veterans, understand that we've carried a burden that others haven't had to carry. Our shoulders are raw, and you're telling us, well, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, unless you've carried the same pack, you might need to think about that. So I think we need to love our veterans. Some have been so hurt. They're miserable people now. They've been so broken for so long. They're angry and bitter, and that's carried out in their marriages and in their families and in their businesses. And they burned every bridge, in their lives. And that is sad. But a prayer cover for them. God can restore. God has forgiveness and mercy. And he doesn't give the okay to do wrong. He's not, sweeping it under the rug. But his mercy and forgiveness absolutely takes that off your record. And you don't have to have the capital punishment for it in hell. And God can heal your wounds here. And that's what I love in the chaplaincy. Now, some people aren't open to this message. They are not on the God page of life. I did 5 years as a chaplain in the Army National Guard here in Florida. And I did that through the Civil Air Patrol program. They were short chaplains. It was 2006 to 2011 that I served with them. Many of their chaplains were deployed. So some of us volunteered to go and help them out. So I was there with them. And once they knew that I had been in Vietnam, we had a bond also because they had been in combat areas. But I tell you, whether it was back in my Vietnam days or whether it was currently with Iraq and Afghanistan, it's the same thing. It's the same sacrifice. It's the same type of wonderful people. We need people with high moral codes to go into the military, not slip-slops. We need people with a high, strong moral fiber, because of the decisions that you have to make in the military are different than you do as a postman, so to speak. And just, I'm not demeaning anything. I'm just saying it's different. It's not one above the other. It's just totally different. So as you see some of the veterans, really love on them and help them, because many of them, I tell you, I cry today. Somebody says, thank you, welcome home. I'm going, oh, thank you. So it's not a sad life. It's a wonderful life. I have the most dear, cherished memories as well as the harder ones. But God made me whole. And yet it didn't stop what I went through, but it puts everything in the right perspective. And I feel good about me, and I feel good about the military, and I want to promote that. And some of our young people, we have some of the finest young people. I meet a lot of them in the Civil Air Patrol, and they're ready for excellent leadership. So,
wow, that's a lot, and I thank you so much, because even your energy and how you present that information, it really is commanding. It gives someone a better understanding of what someone goes through, because how else are they going to hear this kind of a stuff, So I am grateful to you. Is there any words of encouragement that you would give to a member who is currently serving?
Yes. Realize And it's hard to do that because you're busy with your mission. You're consumed in getting your job done. But
Right.
realize the power of the importance of what you do. The military is definitely a team. I don't care if you're the commanding general or you just came in and started work in the nutritional services. I don't care what level you are. You don't have to be a jet jock or some combat or SEAL trained, whatever. It's all important. And whatever you do it with all of your might. And there's 5 principles that people can live by, and it's so important in the military. Integrity first, sexual purity, sobriety, service before self, and excellence in all you do. It's if we had those principles, I'm going to put a shameless plug in here. My book, DMR5, The Next Generation, is still for sale on Amazon, but it has those principles in it. It has a lot of my story about Vietnam in it.
Okay.
And it's a fiction, but it has a lot of truth woven in. But those principles are outlined in there. One of the blessings, and just real quickly, before I know we're not going to be on here all night, but for the past 20 years, I've been going into the high schools in Hillsborough County. They have a course called The History of Vietnam. And I come in as one of the veterans. They ask us to come in as speakers. And I'm unique because I'm a female. It's mostly the guys. And I was a nurse. So I come in, but the first day I go in 2 days in a row. And the second day I bring all my gear in and the litter and all the helmet and the flak jacket and M16 and all my gear. You know, that's a fun day. But the first day I go in, I make a comparative analysis about our country. And I tell them back in 1940, in the 40s, the worst thing a high school senior was called in for was cutting in line, chewing gum, talking out of turn, the simplest little things. That was the worst thing high school seniors were doing in 1940. You fast forward 50 years to 1990, and it's drug abuse, alcohol abuse, teen pregnancy, suicide, assault, and all sorts of violence. And now you fast forward to today, and they're assaulting the teachers and cult activities and teachers having sex with students. I mean, I said, look, it has not always been like you have. They're only 15 and 16 years old in high school. And all they've seen is their social media and their music and their videos. It is absolutely disgusting what they're exposed to. They think this is what our country has always been, and it hasn't. The moral code has declined. That's why our system isn't the problem. It's the bribery, lies, and corruption that's the problem. And our kids, when they saw that comparison, they were shocked. And they just said, I believe everything you just said. And I said, don't believe me. Look it up. Go find out. Right. Our country has changed. How can you be the future leaders, the future moms and dads, when you're willing to lie, when you are running around having sex with everybody in town? There's sex, alcohol, and drugs in middle school. Police cars are parked outside of our schools. My heart breaks. I walked to school by myself at age 5. To go to kindergarten when I missed my little walking group. You can't do that today without a police escort in a big city. I lived in Boston. So my urge to all of those in the military and those beyond, if we do not bring the country that I came from was the one like I just described, where it wasn't that junk. It started in the 60s. This garbage started with the sex, alcohol, and drugs all over. The country I loved and the country I wanted to defend was that country. But a country not worth living in is a country not worth dying for. And I don't want to see it change to that. So I really urge people, our prayer cover is essential. It is God who can open up the hearts with dreams and visions and have people run into most people aren't evil. They're not malicious. They are just misinformed. They've never gotten the truth. They don't understand the importance of the moral code. So I just hope that word can go far and wide, hon. But our military teaches these codes. It's called the code of conduct. In the military, you can be thrown out for adultery. I mean, we have a code in there. If you have drunkenness and DUIs, you are out. So, I mean, the military is a good place, but we need good people in it. It'll go down the tubes like anything else if the bad people.
Right.
So,
What
anyways,
would you?
I'm rejoicing, and I thank you for your service, darling.
Of
We
course.
need to
Oh,
have a
you're
few more.
welcome.
We need to talk more about our flight nurse time.
Yes.
We didn't have
What,
much
would-
time at NISA to do that, but
what would you say to pastors today, and even church leaders that have veterans in their congregation? What are some words that you would be able to say to them today to perhaps help
you know,
them?
a lot of veterans don't feel needed anymore. And if you want to help a vet, give him a job to do. Let him volunteer. Let him drive people to church, pick them up, drop them off. Feel important again. They're great. Most people in the military are great organizers. They're dedicated to duty. They're even on time. You know how they say in the military, if you're 10 minutes early, you're late.
Yes,
You know,
that's right.
there seems to be a thread in excellent veterans, and that can be used in our church communities tremendously. But
Yes,
also, many of our veterans are hurt. There's
yes.
really two things going on. They're hurt if they've been in combat, and they're also still searching for that comrade, that sense of belonging, that I've got your back, I've got your six. And so pastors could really look. Now, I'm telling you that veteran friendly, VFMC, the veteran friendly military congregations, they
Mhm.
have, and it's all free. They send all this material to you. They give you ideas how to incorporate things for your veterans. But it just, and it doesn't mean that you're counseling them. It shows you how to incorporate them into your ministries,
Mhm.
because they come with those kind of qualities of,
Mhm.
also they tend to respond to orders. I mean, there's like obedience is kind of in there, showing up, with the right ideas and things like that,
Mhm.
teamwork
Mhm.
and things like that. These are kind
Right.
of like core values that are inside of us.
Mhm.
And
So
so they make,
I'm gonna reach out to you and see if I can get some of that information and make
oh,
sure it's
sure.
on our website as well, including your book.
Oh, okay, go, there you go. Yeah, there you go.
I'm gonna write that down
There you
and
go.
see if I can get it. But as we draw to a conclusion here, I wanted to, if you have any additional comments for sure, and then I would ask for you to pray for those veterans that are out there, whether they're hurting, needing a place to call home,
Yes.
connection, family, anything.
Yeah. Yes, and just one more message before we can end in prayer here, and something that has helped other veterans that I have, especially the Vietnam veteran who still is suffering somewhat. And I tell them, look, we were blessed by God and his plan. Whether they understand that or not, it's okay. But we're here. We made it home. The
Mhm.
best way to honor our comrades in arms, the best way to honor those who have died in service, is to live your life doubly well,
Mhm.
to have vibrancy, and don't
Yes.
sit under the overpass overdosing yourself in heroin because your pain is so great, because your sadness is so terrible. You dishonor their lives. They didn't get a chance to live, so it's almost like a little mantle put on our shoulders that we should live our lives doubly well for them. Be the
Mhm.
best dad, be the best mom, be the best worker, be there for the people, love on them, be vibrant, travel, do whatever you can in honor and in memory of them. And that usually has helped a lot of veterans. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
but if we can get before the Lord, can we end in a little prayer here? Thank
Yes, yes.
you.
Thank you
Yes,
so much again for being with us.
yes, yes. Thank you, Lord. Father, you are high and holy and wondrous and glorious, and we give you all the praise, the
Yes,
honor, and the
Lord.
glory. Lord, many things are happening on this earth that are not of your will, Lord.
Mm.
Now, nothing, now let me clarify that, and I know you know what I mean, Lord. There's many things that you have not put on people, but because you haven't stopped it, you're doing something with it. So all things come under
Mm.
your power and your grace. There are
Yes.
many people hurting. There are many veterans. They've lost that sense of belonging that you
Mm.
have. I mean, just the uniform alone automatically tells you your rank. And if you have your ribbons on, it tells you where you've been, how long you've been there, what you've accomplished.
Yes.
I mean, your identification is immediate just by walking down the street,
Yes.
and then you're discharged and you become nobody. And it's hard. It's not that pride was doing it. It just that it became how it was. We knew who we were. We knew what we were doing, and it was recognized by others. But Lord, help those that are making that transition now. Help them to understand their value to their families, to their communities, but most of all to you. And Father, I just ask you to help and to pierce the hearts of those who are hurting, those who have suffered from loss, those who are confused, those don't know which way they're going, and those that come out strong and do have a plan and do that.
Yes,
Bless
God.
them and keep them. But
Yes.
Lord, help us all to lift each other up, because we are so important to you. We need to be important to each other. And
Yes.
Lord, I just ask for your favor to continue upon our military, upon our veterans, upon our country.
Yes,
Lord,
Lord.
we have a unique situation here. It's not like any other. It's not kings and queens. It's not dictators and generals. It's not. It's the people coming free to live, to build, to grow, and we don't want that to get lost, Lord. So help our military while we're in the military, and help us to make the transition to civilian life, to better both wherever we are. And we just ask you all of that, Lord, trusting you in
Yes.
Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Amen,
God
honey.
bless you. God
Amen.
bless you. Thank you so
God
much.
bless you. He does. Amen, darling.
I will be in touch. I will let you know when the link is ready for the compilation of all of this, and please keep checking us out at awordwiththelord.com. Thank you
I
very
will.
much for your service and for all that you continue to do.
And when do we
God
get
bless
to
you.
when do we get to interview you? Thank you for your service.
I don't know.
Oh, all
I'm
right.
just,
God,
thank you so much.
God bless you. Listen, I'm going to
God
send you
bless
that
you.
stuff right now. So God bless you,
Oh,
dear.
thank
Yep.
you. Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Yep.
Bye.
Okay. Bye bye.